This is a show about breasts and the people who have them, from bras and sexuality to health and everyday life. This is the very best podcast ever. Hi breasties, my name is Nadia Figueroa and I'm a bra designer. We're back. Life has really been throwing us some curveballs these last few weeks, but we love that you keep coming back to us and listening. I often get stressed out about keeping to a schedule, making sure I'm putting content out in a timely manner, worried we'll lose listeners if I don't get the next episode out and finished in time. But being in go, go, go mode has never served me well, and sometimes I have to give in to that millennial trope that I have to treat my mental health as well as my physical health. I keep saying out loud, I need to get my shit together. But in reality, as one of my best friends always tells me, getting your shit together is never really the immediate goal. It's about making small, attainable adjustments that bring you closer to that finished product. I've said it before, we're all works in progress here. And whenever I do get stressed, our producer, Alyssa McHugh, always reminds me, life comes first. And you know what? You breasties are always there for us, whether it takes us 2 weeks or a month to get a new episode out. You always come back to us, and we love you for that. So, thank you. Thank you for listening to every single episode. Thank you for engaging with us on social, for all your lovely messages. You make all the research and late nights worth it, and we can't wait to bring you more content. And now, we have a favor to ask you. Please go on whatever platform you listen to us on and rate and review our podcast. It takes just a couple minutes, and it really does help new listeners find the show. You're probably listening on your phone, right? Go ahead, tap, tap, tap over to your podcast app, and leave us a little review. I'll start the show right after this intro music, so don't worry, you won't miss anything. This last entry in our breast cancer series is going to focus on a different kind of survivor story. This episode, we're going to talk about previvors. You may or may not have heard this word before, but there's a good chance you're familiar with the concept. Previvors refer to people who are predisposed to hereditary cancer. We'll come back to the word previvor in a few, but first, let's explore that term, hereditary cancer. What is that? You may remember from our first episode in this series that cancer is basically uncontrolled cell growth. Taking you back to high school biology, and remember, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so this is going to be extremely simplified. Genes are the building blocks of our DNA, and DNA is essentially a blueprint for the structure, function, and behavior of our cells, which are the building blocks of, well, us. Genes basically work like on and off switches for our cells. They control all of our cells' functions, including multiplying and, when necessary, dying. And when they're working properly, they act as fail-safes to help protect us from developing cancer. If one of our cells goes rogue and just can't get enough of itself, we have specific genes that step in and kill the offending cells to stop it from killing us. So it goes without saying that if one of those genes gets damaged, it can result in that uncontrolled cell growth. Cancer. Anytime DNA copies itself during cell multiplication, there is a risk that a gene can mutate or change or get damaged. Now, this happens all the time in our cells, but usually our body finds the mistake and fixes it before it becomes an issue. Sometimes, though, our cells can't fix those mutations and they end up getting passed on to other cells. For whatever reason, the gene that is supposed to protect us can't or fails to do its job. All cancers are caused by a change or damage to one of those genes, and as we get older, those gene mutations become more likely, so we have a higher risk of developing cancer as we age. So that accounts for cancers that just pop up during our lifetime, the ones that are a result of devastatingly bad luck. Sometimes, though, cancers are caused by genetic mutations we're born with that were passed on to us from our parents. People born with these mutations are predisposed to develop cancer at an earlier age than average. This is known as hereditary cancer. It accounts for about 5 to 10% of all cancers, and in breast cancer specifically, the statistics are about the same. There are two pretty famous offenders when it comes to hereditary breast cancer, BRCA1 and BRCA2, spelled BRCA. That stands for breast, BR, cancer, CA, gene 1, and breast cancer, gene 2. Gotta love a good acronym, right? The BRCA gene mutation was discovered in 1990. I believe there's a common misconception that it's the genes themselves that cause cancer. That's certainly what I thought. If you test positive for these genes, you're gonna get cancer. But actually, everyone has these two genes. They're tumor suppressor genes, and they act as the gatekeepers I told you about earlier. Their job is to make sure that cell growth stays under control. So, if someone gets genetic testing, it's not really the presence of these genes that's being tested for, it's the presence of mutations of the genes that cause them not to function properly. BRCA1 and BRCA2 cover other types of cancer as well. Women who have BRCA1 and BRCA2 genetic mutations have a heightened risk of developing not only breast cancer, but also ovarian, pancreatic cancer, and melanoma. And men who have the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genetic mutations are at a greater risk for prostate, pancreatic, melanoma, and, yes, breast cancer. Never forget that dudes can get breast cancer too. Check your pecs. Of course, if someone has one of these mutations, it doesn't definitely mean they will get cancer. On average, a woman who has a BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene mutation has up to a 7 in 10 chance of getting breast cancer. Although I read in one Washington Post article the risk could also be as high as 87%. That's significantly higher than the 1 in 8 chance of women who don't have the mutation. BRCA1 and BRCA2 also aren't the only gene mutations we have to look out for. They're just the most common, and generally speaking, they're the most risky. In my research, I found there are literally dozens of mutations that can lead to hereditary breast cancer, and there's still research being done to find more. Just in case you needed something else to keep you up at night these days. So how do I know if I have one of these risky gene mutations? Well, if you think you're at risk, your practitioner can perform a blood test that uses DNA analysis to identify mutations in the breast cancer susceptibility genes. FYI, we will link in our show notes sources where you can get this genetic testing done. There are certain members of the population who are considered to be at greater risk for having these mutations. According to breastcancer.org, you're a candidate for the BRCA gene test if you fall into any one of these categories. You have a blood relative on either side of your family who had breast cancer before age 50. There is both breast and ovarian cancer on the same side of the family or in a single individual. You have relatives with triple-negative breast cancer, that is, cancer that is not fueled by hormones or the HER2 protein. You have a relative who had cancer in both breasts. There are other cancers in your family other than breast cancer. A man in your family has had breast cancer. You are Black and have been diagnosed with breast cancer at age 35 or younger. Side note, I dove into this one more, and what I found is that while it has become clear that although the incidence rate of breast cancer in Black women is similar to that of white women, the mortality rates are extremely different. Overall, there's been a 40% decline in breast cancer deaths over the last 30 years. But today, Black women diagnosed with breast cancer still have a 40% higher death rate than white women. That number is even higher in Black women under 50. Black women also tend to be diagnosed with more aggressive breast cancers at younger ages and in more advanced stages. The jury still seems to be out as to why, and that is primarily because breast cancer research, studies, and clinical trials are overwhelmingly conducted in only white women. This also doesn't account for the huge disparity in access to healthcare and insurance among non-white Americans. That results in delayed diagnoses and interrupted or incomplete treatment, and it's a major factor in breast cancer mortality rates in minorities. For more information on the research being done in this area, please visit the Breast Cancer Research Foundation website at brcf.org. We'll link them in our show notes. Another risk factor that contributes to the likelihood of a BRCA mutation is being of Ashkenazi Jewish descent. That's because something called a founder mutation, specifically in the BRCA gene, runs through the genetic lines of Ashkenazi Jews. A founder mutation is a genetic mutation that originated in a small, isolated group of ancestors. Ashkenazi Jews are members of the Jewish faith whose ancestry traces back to Eastern Europe. Although about 80% of modern Jews are of Ashkenazi descent, their roots can actually be traced to a small group of around 330 people who lived during the Middle Ages. Women of Ashkenazi descent have a much higher risk of having that founder mutation in the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, approximately 1 in 40. And since historically Jewish people have married within their own faith, it's made that founder mutation prevalent in modern Ashkenazi Jews. One thing I want to mention is that while all of these are risk factors, they're just that, risks. If one of these applies to you, it doesn't definitely mean you have a risky gene. In our last episode, we spoke to a breast cancer survivor who was only 32 when she was diagnosed, and to this day, she has tested negative for every risky gene we're testing is available. Up until 1999, the word most often used to describe people who carried these gene mutations but had not been diagnosed with cancer yet was unaffected carrier. But in an effort to give identity and empowerment to the people faced with the challenges that come along with the increased risk of cancer, the word Previvor was born. The term was first used in 2000 by an organization called FORCE, a US-based organization who advocates for and provides educational material to help people with hereditary cancer make medical decisions for their survival. FORCE stands for Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. Again, with the great acronyms, although I think this one is technically a backronym, but I digress. No two breasts are alike, and no two breast cancers are alike. So of course it makes sense that not everyone identifies with the word Previvor. Some find it glib or demeaning towards breast cancer survivors, since by definition, previvors have never actually had cancer. I'm going to quote Rethink Breast Cancer's response to this issue because I think they sum it up really well. Quote, "This us versus them mentality is a disservice to all women who are struggling with their risk or with cancer. Being able to self-identify with whatever label one wants is empowering when it comes to getting support and finding a community that accepts you for who you are. After all, that is what we all need, no matter what we are facing." End quote. Previvors face their own set of decisions, challenges, and difficulties that cannot and should not be compared to anyone else's. Most often after genetic testing, if you're found to have one of these risky genes, it's recommended you speak to your doctor and a genetic counselor to weigh your options. These options include living your life as before, but with heightened screening and surveillance, or sometimes surgical options such as having prophylactic or preventative mastectomies. The issue of monitoring versus surgery is a major debate in the breast cancer community. We spoke to an amazing Previvor, and she does identify with that word, who was faced with that exact decision and chose surgery over monitoring. Koslen is a good friend of Alyssa's and graciously shared her story with us during what completely coincidentally happened to be National Hereditary Cancer Week. She has a no-nonsense, straightforward, but warm delivery, and we hope you'll walk away from this conversation with the same sense of hope and empowerment that we did. Breasties, please welcome Koslen to the Very Breast Podcast Ever. Welcome to the Very Breast Podcast Ever. Nice to meet you, Chloe. Alyssa shared a little bit about your experience with me, and I know you went through a pretty intense experience at a young age. You were 26 when you tested positive for both BRCA genes, and because you had an increased risk of cancer, I think something like 72%, you then decided to have a double mastectomy and implants.
Nice to meet you and happy to be here. I was just turned 26 when I found out that I was positive for both genes. Basically, my paternal grandmother, who is an Ashkenazi Jew, got diagnosed with breast cancer at 32 and died at 39. And so my mom growing up was always like, this could be a thing. You're going to have to get early screening. So I was getting screening since I was 24. Everything was normal. They always kept asking me, do you want to get tested? Do you want to get tested? I was like, no. And then I'm like, you know what, let me have my dad get tested and then he'll be negative and I'll be negative and we can just move on with our lives. And so in June of 2018, I was actually home with my mom and I get a call from my dad being like, I'm so sorry. I'm positive. I'm positive for both genes. And I knew in my gut that I was too at that moment. We're very, very, very similar in many, many ways. And I just kind of 100% knew that I was going to have to go down this path and I would be positive too. So in August of that year, I got tested and found out I was positive for both genes. And for me, it kind of just wasn't even a choice. I feel like I was in this situation where I would almost be able to cheat God and be able to see in the future. And so there was no option for me whether or not to get this double mastectomy. It was just this is what we're going to have to do now. I'm making this appointment, I'm scheduling the surgery and we're going to go and do this. And so in February of 2019, I got the surgery.
So you and your dad were the first in your family to get tested, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like BRCA is a fairly new thing. So they've only been doing tests for it for the past like 15, 20 years, really even knew it was a thing. And so like his mom obviously was not as lucky.
Was it just kind of a situation where like your parents suspected that there might be a gene for it, but they just weren't sure? Like what led you to actually go get tested?
Probably my mom. Like she really always just brought up like this is really common in Ashkenazi Jews, and she died so early of breast cancer, and like so you're gonna have to deal with this, whatever that meant. And as I got older, you know, I'm 29 now, so even in my mid 20s, like insurance will cover testing and will cover the surgery from like 10 years before or after the like family member was diagnosed or died. So I could have started this at 22. I started at 24.
And how old was your grandmother, you said, when she contracted it?
32 and died at 39.
Okay. So once you had the confirmed test, tell me about the day you got your results back. What was that like for you?
I actually was in the car going home from JFK from visiting my aunt in Florida. And I like got the call from the geneticist, and I was just like, she like told me, and I was like, yeah, I had a feeling. Like, yeah, I knew. It was almost like I wasn't surprised. I just really, really knew in my gut that I was going to be positive. And so it wasn't as shocking. And it was kind of just like time to like time to go on to the next and figure out like what I need to do. And luckily I had already been seeing a really, really amazing breast surgeon for my screenings, that I just kind of went to her, and she works with the plastic surgeons who developed like straight to implant double mastectomies. My breast surgeon, she partners with this duo of plastic surgeons, and one of them like created straight to implant double mastectomies. So there's two kinds of double mastectomies. One is where you have to have expanders, and that is kind of proven through studies to be like really, really mentally tough on patients, because you have to psych yourself up for this surgery, you get the surgery, and then over 6 months after, you have to get saline shot into the expanders over time to expand the skin enough to then go through another surgery and put the implants in. And so this just happened to be that my amazing breast surgeon worked with the plastic surgeons who originated this way less antiquated surgery. And so it was kind of just like, okay, like make an appointment with them, figure out how to deal with this. I was like doing some research, and I saw this woman who was writing an article for like Bustle or something, and it was like she found out she was BRCA positive through a 23andMe test results. She was probably, I think, like a year or two older than me. And I reached out to her over Instagram because she was like going through this as I was. And I actually happened to reach out to her the day before her surgery and made like a connection with her. And she really helped me figure out like what kind of things I need to buy for post-op, and, what is annoying and what is painful and like what isn't actually as bad as you think it would be. And having that was really, really helpful too.
One of the things that I remember when I was trying to figure out what to like get for you was like it was hard to find. I mean, like it was harder to find it specific to your circumstance, because I think at first I was trying to find like a book or something that I could get you, of course, because that's like just so what I would do. But I was like, it was always like somebody who already had cancer, and so it was like I couldn't find. It was so hard to find material that was like a shared experience or a shared story. And I remember when you told me that you were connecting with that woman, and it was just so good for you.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, both of Alyssa and my manager at the time, his niece happened to have it and had gone through the surgery already. So I was able to meet her in person. She actually worked for Sloan Kettering, which is like one of the best cancer hospitals, and she got it done there because she worked there already. But it was great to meet her, and she was kind of like, you feel like, you're going to feel like you're never going to be able to lift your arms again, like you will. And like, she wasn't in serious relationships, and she's like, I've dated people and they haven't even noticed. Like, it was great to just kind of have that like 20 minutes on a park bench with her to just give information that you can't really get easily, because as Alyssa said, like this isn't a cancer diagnosis. This is a very, very unique thing. You're not like a cancer survivor. You're like a Previvor, I think is what they called her, pre-survivor.
That actually brings me to my next question for you, which is that did they give you any other options, or was this kind of what you knew you wanted to do from the day you got the results?
So, I mean, the other option is just to get screenings every 6 months and frankly live in fear. Like, I just don't think that was never an option in my eyes. I felt, even though it sucked, I felt so lucky to be given this option. And I think that there's a bit of selfishness if I wasn't going to, my boyfriend, to our future kids, to my parents, to everyone close in my life, where like, I'm choosing not to because I don't know, I'm scared or whatever it may be, when I have this opportunity to get ahead of something that kills millions of women.
And what kind of screenings were you getting? Do you mean mammograms?
No. So basically, someone my age, you can't get a mammogram because your breast tissue is too dense, so they can't see anything.
For more information on mammograms and for an amazing explanation as to why they can't see anything in young boobs, please listen to our interview with Dr. Monica Simmons in episode 7. I can't plug that episode enough. She's the best.
So basically what I would do is every 6 months I'd go into my breast surgeon, and even before getting the BRCA diagnosis, she would just do a screening and like feel around and make sure everything felt okay. And then I would get a sonogram as well, so an ultrasound. Honestly, I was like pretty calm about it, maybe because I was young, but I know as I got older, closer to the age where my grandmother was diagnosed, it would have just been scarier and scarier.
And what kind of guidance did you get from your doctors? Did they support your decision?
100%. And like, I was just so lucky that I had the doctor that I had. Like, she's amazing. She like sat on the phone with my mom before the surgery, answering all of her questions. They were just like, they were so lovely, and they did such an amazing job. And like, my boobs look better now than they did before. But they honestly look so similar. They just kind of look like a little perkier and a little bit more forward facing. They just like, it's insane how good a job they did and how supportive they were through the process.
Stay perky. I'm so jealous of that.
Can you tell me more about your surgery? You mentioned that you had this surgery that was direct implant. So can you explain that to me a little more?
Yeah, sure. So basically the surgery was like 6 hours long, and the breast surgeon would take out all of the breast tissue, and she would switch to the other breast, and then the plastic surgeons would start working on the implant. I decided to keep my nipples. That was one thing that I felt very strongly about, because I just felt like I was going to be deformed without it. And there's several options, like you can get your nipples completely removed, which is, more of like the 100% foolproof way to get everything. If you leave your nipples, there's still breast tissue. It's just the minimal amount doesn't increase your risk of cancer in a big way. So I found it worth it for just like my mental health in the years to come. But some people get tattoos, some people get skin grafts. It just kind of depends. I was a good candidate for nipple sparing because I was like young and I didn't smoke and I didn't have cancer. I don't have cancer. So they didn't have to kind of remove other skin that was, tumorous or infected with cancer. So basically that's how it works. She did one, and then the plastic surgeon came in and kind of after her. And then I was in the hospital for one night, and I had drains, and those drains had to be changed twice a day. And basically you measured how much blood and liquid was coming out. And when there was underneath a certain amount for a full day, you could get the drains removed.
Yeah. I remember my sister had, she actually had breast cancer, and she had a double mastectomy, and I was the one who cleaned her drains. And I remember doing the little, they do the little snake motion. You have to measure the milliliters at the end. And so that was probably, for her, it was probably the least stressful part. But for me, it was like, oh God, I got to get this right.
My boyfriend did it, and luckily he's very meticulous, but I it would have grossed me out to have to do it by myself.
Did you do anything to prepare yourself mentally for the procedure?
I really don't know. Like for some reason, and this is very like unlike me in any other circumstance, but I just was very much like, this is the reality and this is what's happening and I've accepted it and it's fine and it's what's going to happen. Everyone's like, you're so strong, you're so brave. And I'm like, no, this is just what it is. And it wasn't until I think I cried once about it, like that this isn't fair. And, right before I was obviously very, very scared to just have such a massive surgery that I'd never had before, any kind of surgery before. But I don't think I really did anything because for some reason, like in this one instance in my life, it was just like, there is no choice and we're just going to keep chugging along and moving forward and getting this over with.
Didn't you have like a binder of like research?
Oh yes,
Am I
did.
making
Not
this
research.
up?
Not research. I had a binder full of like all of my medical records and everything, and just like all the appointments and any like lists of stuff and notes from all the appointments and things like that.
I feel like that's how you mentally prepared.
Yeah, I
That's
project
how you.
managed
That's
it
how you.
pretty
Yeah,
much.
that's how you would mentally prepare.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've talked to a few other guests who've had surgery, and the question that always comes up is how they made the decision for what size they were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to just stay the same, or did they give you any options for that?
Yeah, so like I'm tall, I'm 5'11", so I probably could handle even bigger boobs than I have, but basically I just wanted it to be natural. And that's what I kept saying to the plastic surgeon is like, just want it to be natural. I have naturally very like far apart boobs. And so I was like, if there's any way you could have them closer together, like make me have cleavage, like that would be, the silver lining of this whole thing, if it's possible. But yeah, so I think I went from like a D to a double D.
Mm-hmm.
But during like my last post-op with my plastic surgeon, he was like, your pockets are formed, like you're tall, you could totally go bigger if you want. I'm like, no, like I'm fine. I wanted it to be natural and I still, stick with that.
Yeah. Your pockets
I
are
feel
formed.
like it was
That phrase is going to stick in my head.
I feel like it was a moment of levity when you were going through it too, because I think, well, maybe this was just me, but I was like, I'm going to start a pin board or a Pinterest board of boobs.
No,
and
I
then
did
realized,
do that.
Right? Didn't we do that at work?
Yeah, sitting at the bench, we did. I remember showing you different boobs.
So you mentioned earlier that your breasts are pretty much the same. Are there any differences at all that you can think of between the breasts you have today and the breasts you had before your procedure?
Yeah, they're definitely like a little bit more closer together, but not that much. Because they're far apart, the pockets kind of when they set in, they kind of are far apart too. But my nipples are facing forward, like fully forward. They're like even, which I feel like is just not the norm for most women. So that's kind of nice. And like from the side, it looks like I have bigger boobs. And obviously I have scars. I have really long scars underneath each breast, and then 2 small circular scars on each side where the drains were. But they heal skin color, and like I really don't notice them very often.
Do they feel any different, like sensations, or like is there any numbness or weird nerve stuff that happened afterwards?
Yeah. There's lots of weird stuff with that. So basically they scrape out everything. They have to take out all of the nerves because that's intertwined with the breast tissue. But your nerves regenerate. So I knew that I was going to have some numbness. So basically it's like the front of your chest is fine. And then you kind of go like right underneath where your nipple is. And that goes like numb to the scars. And then on the side, like if you just drew a line across each breast at the nipple and below to the scar is numb. And so it's very weird. And like my nipples still have full sensation, but it's like a different sensation than what it was before. And then through like after like the first year of healing, in the first year of healing, there was a lot of like nerve pain. Knock on wood, it wasn't that bad, but there were sporadic moments of like very sharp nerve pain, which is probably just nerves regenerating. And I remember like being in work meetings and like having to resist like grabbing my boob because it, was so painful. It's just kind of, you go to hold wherever you're in pain. But all in all, I feel like I was very lucky with the healing and any kind of like pain or anything.
What was your relationship with your breasts like before the surgery?
That's such a good question. Um, I would say that for a long time, I had no boobs. I was very, very, very skinny. And so it was just like a pencil. And then all of a sudden, like towards the end of college, I got boobs or like more boobs. And they were always just kind of like far apart and there. They were never like annoying. They were never too big. Like the way my pockets sit, they sit like upright. I don't have like creases or whatever, like where you get like under boob sweat. Like I don't have any of that. So they were just kind of there. It was never like a defining feature. Like I had great cleavage and, I'd show it off all the time. And I was never like Chloe's that tall girl with the big boobs or whatever. They're just kind of there. But I felt like I finally got a pair of decent boobs, then they were gone because I had to get the surgery. But luckily they were never. And I remember talking actually to the girl I met on Instagram, and she said the same thing, that she like has really, really small boobs. She's very, very petite, so it was never like a defining characteristic of herself. So having to lose them wasn't the biggest deal, and I agree with that. I think losing the opportunity to experience breastfeeding was probably more of something that I had to just kind of learn to accept, because I always thought I would breastfeed, and my mom was always like talking about how she breastfed me and how good it is for you and the baby and whatever. So that's probably something I had to let go of a little more than actually my boobs.
And what about now? How has your relationship with them changed?
I don't have to wear a bra, so that's nice. I guess it's really like, it's just kind of there. Like I try to explain to you, like it doesn't feel like, especially the numb parts, doesn't really feel like they're mine. They're just like, they're just there. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Like maybe like touching your foot while it's asleep, like you see yourself touching it and you're touching it and you know that it's there, but it doesn't feel like anything.
Have your doctors indicated at all if that numbness will ever go away, or is that something you're always going to feel?
No, I'll always feel it. And I don't actually like notice it day to day unless I touch that area, but like sometimes it'll like itch, or like I'll feel an itch on the inside, but you go to scratch it and it's numb. So it doesn't,
it doesn't do anything.
It's a very weird. Yeah. So I think I think about them less. They're just kind of there.
Do you still wear like the same types of bras and clothing that you did before, or has that changed at all?
I don't wear underwire bras, which I used to before. I just wear like bralettes. And it was actually like I had to find like the most comfortable, like the right ones, which was a longer process. Same with finding bathing suits too, that don't like have underwire that cuts right at my scar, and ones that cover my scars, because you don't want the sun to hit them or they darken. So everything met in that way is a little bit different, but like also like I don't wear bras sometimes because they just sit up on their own.
Is that a plus or a minus for you?
I would say it's a plus. Yeah, for sure. Why not? Like, when you're like running down the hall or like get your buzzer or something, and it's like you have to hold your boobs because you feel like they're like flailing everywhere. I don't have to do that anymore. And that was like a conscious thing where I'm like, oh, like they don't move, so I don't need to do that.
What were some of the major and minor concerns and fears you went through as you were going through all of this?
I think the major concerns were like feeling like I was deformed, not feeling like feminine, because like, again, I'm really tall and it's not like I have like a really big butt or like, crazy curves or whatever. I'm tall and I'm skinny. And so I felt like if I didn't have boobs, I would feel not womanly or feminine. And that's why I chose to do the nipple sparing. And then like, that's like the mental aspect. And then like that actual physical aspect is of course something going wrong in the surgery, having permanent nerve damage, a nipple dying or skin dying, which, if it doesn't, these doctors are so amazing at what they do. You have to scrape everything out, but leave the blood flow and blood supply to the skin or it'll die.
So we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but I've never heard that phrase before, a nipple dying. Tell me what you mean by that.
So basically it's like your skin all has blood flow to it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it stays alive. It doesn't turn black and die. When they're doing the double mastectomy, they're taking out everything underneath that layer of skin,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to keep the blood supply intact, or there won't be any blood flow to the skin and the skin will die. And so that's always a risk because what they're doing is so invasive, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's so many little pieces of breast tissue they're trying to get out that there is a chance that they'll nick blood supply and that they won't realize, and that your skin will start to die.
Wow. So since you did do nipple sparing, do they still have to do screenings on that part of your breast, or are you kind of at the same risk as the general population now?
I go in for yearly screenings, not sonograms, literally just like the my breast surgeon just feeling around, making sure things feel okay. There's no real risk. The increased risk of keeping my nipples was so minute that there's no like extra anything I need to do. Every 3 years, I have to get an MRI to make sure that my implants are okay and that they haven't like popped or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, I don't know, every 15 years, maybe it's longer than that. I really don't remember. I'll have to get them switched out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was going to be my next question was, did they tell you anything about possibly having to get them replaced down the line?
Yeah, I think because I did it so young and I'm, don't smoke and don't really drink or anything like that, like I'm in a good place to keep them for a long time. But
except for when I peer pressure her.
Yeah, that's the only time I drink more than one trick. But yeah, I should be able to keep them for quite a while, and hopefully the MRIs don't show anything crazy. I'd rather not go through surgery. It's a lot less invasive. They go in through the same scar, the pockets are already there, they just switch them out, but still, like, there's always risk.
Do you still have the same boyfriend you had when you did
Okay.
Yeah. How did he react to all of this?
Like the whole thing, he was like incredibly supportive. He is a lot more, he's next to me right now.
That's why I asked if you had your headphones in.
I saw his head bob over a few minutes ago. And
I knew someone was there and I didn't want to put you in a weird situation. So
yeah, he's right there. No, I mean, he's heard everything I'm saying, but he was incredibly supportive. He's definitely like the more like positive one of us. I'm definitely a more of a realist and negative of a thinker. That's my go-to. And so he's just a lot more lighthearted in that way and positive, and he makes me laugh every day. And I think all of those characteristics were incredibly important for this whole process, because it was like very tough and very scary, and regardless of how scared he was, he didn't like show it to me. Just kind of let me be scared and handle it in the way I was handling it. And then he like took really good care of me. He changed my drains, gave me all my drugs. He
lifted your water cup to your mouth.
He lifted my water cup. He spoon fed me. He pushed me up, because people, you don't realize like how much you use your arms and your torso and whatever to move. And so you can't get off the couch, can't get out of bed, can't go to the bathroom when you're in the very beginning. Like, you can't do anything. He also,
I think, I don't know if this was your idea or his idea, but he also, like, I think it was when you went into surgery or the day you went into surgery, he did a group text with like all of her friends, just giving like little updates. And then also, I think like as you were healing, like every once in a while you get like just a picture.
Yeah.
I remember with your hair getting braided and
yeah.
Our like 4 or 5 male listeners out there, take note. He sounds like a good guy.
Yeah. So I think it really, he really like stepped up in a different way than for something we'd never had to go through before.
So where did you find strength through this process? What did you tap from to find strength or even laughter through this process?
Oh God, I don't know. It's so hard to answer that question. Like, I really don't know, because there's never been another instance in my life. As I said, I'm like a very negative first thinker. I'm very much a realist, but in this situation, I wasn't like that. I was just kind of like very one foot in front of the other, need to get this done. So I don't know where I pulled the strength from to do that, honestly, because that isn't my norm. It was just
like survival mode.
Yeah, like totally survival mode. And I guess because I'd never thought of it as a choice from the second I found out that I had BRCA, it just was like, this is something that needs to get done. So now I'm in planning mode and, and that's it.
So I know your family was kind of for the ride with you in the beginning when you were first getting tested. How did they react when you decided to have this procedure?
Um, they were totally on board, like for sure. I mean, I didn't decide to have the mastectomy until after I knew I was BRCA positive. But yeah, they were totally on board. I think that my mom would have been very much opposed to me not having it. I think she would have thought it was stupid that I wouldn't have had it. We never had that discussion because I was always on board, but everyone was very supportive. Everyone was very much like, you're so strong, you're so brave, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no one was like, that's stupid, you shouldn't do that.
Did your insurance cover it?
Yeah, so basically insurance fully covers this because it's more expensive to go through cancer treatment. And that's how they look at it, which is super fucked up. But like,
yeah,
honestly, I'm glad because this, I got the bill after, and for one of my boobs for the plastic surgeon, it was $140,000 just for one boob for him putting in the implant and like whatever else.
Damn.
There's so much other cost. Like that was a minute little thing. There's everything else they do to you during this time. So thank goodness that they cover it.
And don't you love how they price it per boob?
I know. It's hilarious. Like, do they price it per testicle?
Right? Like we need to do an episode just on insurance.
It's a good one.
And how much I hate it.
100%.
Well, and how important it is, like that you were lucky to have insurance at the time and to have to be taken care of, and that can you imagine facing that without
absolutely
that safety net or that assistance?
I can't imagine facing this with cancer. So like my second post-op, I think it was 6 months after my surgery, or no, sorry, it was only 3 months after my surgery. My second plastic surgery post-op, I saw my doctor, I went, he checked everything out. Everything was fine. And he was like, I have a patient in the other room and she is just terrified. And she's trying to figure out if she's going to do straight to implant or going to do skin tissue. So basically, if you don't want to do an implant, they take tissue from they take fat from your stomach or your butt or whatever, and they put it in your boobs, which is much more of an invasive surgery because you're having multiple surgeries. And she was trying to figure that out. He let me know that she was a cancer patient, and what I just talked to her quickly, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. She came in and she was wearing a wig and she just looked so terrified. And it was just like such a humbling experience because she just looked so scared. And I just couldn't imagine having to deal with this and be on chemo and radiation and actually deal with the cancer diagnosis. I just feel so lucky to be able to have done this when I can, how I was able to.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to decide whether they should get the test?
I think you should 100% do it. There's been a couple instances where my breast surgeon has reached out to have me talk to people who are recently tested positive and trying to figure out what to do with surgery. And I think I tell them the same thing too. Obviously it's your body, it's your own choice, but you're given an opportunity to cheat God and kind of know your future and deal with it in advance. And I think that you're selfish to yourself and to the people that love you if you don't do it. There's not many other instances like this where you know your odds in advance and can make an educated decision. And that the lead up really sucks. Right after really sucks. But within a few weeks, you're fine. You're still healing, but you can move around a little. I think I had to be with someone all the time for 2 weeks. And then my boyfriend went back to work and, no one was with me and I was fine. I could get up, I could go to the bathroom, I could feed myself, the lead up sucks, but then you've just possibly added years and years and years to your life.
So as someone who's gone through it and with a few years between you and the experience now, is there anything else you want to share? Anything we didn't cover?
I would literally be find a way to reach out to me on my Instagram and I'll I'm happy to talk to you. I've talked to several other people that see my breast surgeon and I talked to that person who saw my plastic surgeon and very open about it. Like I literally showed my boobs to my female friends at the job Alyssa and I were at, like in the bathroom. Like I'm very open. It's just like no one really goes through this, so there aren't that many there are not that many resources.
Like, do you want to see my boobs?
Because I know everybody wants to. I knew everyone like went through it with me when I was at this job. We were all very close and I had good girlfriends there. I knew they all wanted to, but I knew they weren't going to ask. So I was like, I'll just show you. It's crazy.
Could you ask, like, should people, like, your doctor helped connect you, but did you ask for that? Do you think sometimes people do need to ask for it, or is like just need to know that maybe that they should, if their doctor doesn't prompt them, that they should ask their doctor to help connect them with people?
I think so. Yeah, why not? I mean, I definitely think so. And I was very close with my breast surgeon. Like, you know, she's someone whenever I go in for my appointments, you know, before COVID, she'd always give me a big hug when I saw her. Like, we just like vibed really well. So she reached out and asked if I was open to talking to people. And I was like, you know, that's like the least I could do in this situation. So I think that there will always be someone like that your doctor has, you know, that your doctor knows and can connect you with. I definitely think it's worth it. It makes things less scary.
So talking about showing your breasts to people, how do people react most often when they see them?
They're just like, wow, they look really great. Like, whoa, like, I mean, Alyssa, how did you react when you saw them?
I don't remember.
I know, right?
That's probably a good sign though, because that means they look like boobs.
Yeah, I honestly don't even really remember. I remember when I saw your pictures that you had taken from before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, wow, these are incredible. Maybe that's what I said when I saw your real boobs. I hope so.
I mean, no one's going to be like, wow, you look deformed after you go through this like terrifying surgery experience. But like, I think more times, I think always like people are like, they look really good. Mm-hmm. I had someone look at them, my boyfriend's best friend's wife, who was born and raised in LA and has seen like a ton of fake boobs. And, you know, this is different than just getting a boob job. They're taking away all your breast tissue. It's a completely different thing. And she was like, you know, I've seen so many fake boobs and like yours look better than all of these other fake boobs that I've seen, which was kind of funny.
That sounds amazing though. Like I kind of want to see them now. You don't
have we're in the same place.
So don't think too hard about these.
Right.
What word do you use most often for breasts?
Boobs.
What's your least favorite word for breasts?
Titties.
That's the one. That's the one so many people hate. Titties and tatas. Everyone hates those.
And sometimes tits, but I think that they really think titties. And they're just
right?
like, they're rapid fire, so they panic.
I'm toying with the idea of calling them tit fire questions, but so many people hate the word tits.
That's
and I'm
really
like, I don't
funny.
know. Like,
I like that.
You like it?
Yeah, instead of spitfire, tit fire.
Tit fire, right?
Yeah.
Trust Chloe's opinion. She's got great taste.
Okay. Do you remember your first bra?
No.
Zero memory?
I remember getting a camisole with a built-in bra and like ask my friend, like, do you see those straps? It's a bra. I'm like feeling so cool.
And it was just like the elastic. Was it the elastic around?
Yes, the elastic that was built into the cami. You buy like at Gap Kids.
Yeah.
Those were big for a while.
Yeah, the early 2000s was all about the shelf bra cami.
Totally.
What type of bra, if any, do you prefer and why?
Now I prefer just a bralette, like something cotton with like elastic, because it gives support, but it's comfortable, doesn't hit my scars. But I do have one real bra, I call it, that like has underwire, and it's like something I would wear before I got the surgery, and it makes my boobs look fucking huge, which I'm not used to. It's like they're massive and like I don't know what to do with them.
What's your favorite thing or something interesting about your breasts?
God, sorry, I'm thinking too much about this. This is tit fire. I gotta go quick. I guess just that they're, I don't know, like they're just boobs.
They'll stay perky forever.
Yeah, there you go. Gravity has nothing on them.
I kind of like they're just boobs, though. That's a good. That's
Yeah.
actually a really good answer.
Right.
What do you think is the hardest part of having breasts?
I think just everything that's like, it's not like the breasts per se, it's like what they mean to your womanhood, I guess.
Like what they
Yeah.
represent?
Yeah, what they represent.
And what do you wish those without breasts knew about breasts?
That they're probably more annoying than they are, however attractive that people without breasts think people with breasts are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Very Breast Podcast Ever was written, produced, and recorded by Nadia Figueroa and Alyssa McHugh. Cover art by Alyssa McHugh. Opening music by Margaret Tran. Check her out on Spotify. For episode transcripts and sources, please visit our website at theverybreastpodcastever.com. Do you have questions? Corrections? Do you want to tell us your breast story? Get in touch with us on Instagram at theverybreastpod or email us at theverybreastpodcastever@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, share with your breasties, and consider donating to our Patreon. Thanks for listening. Now go out and make today the breast day ever. Hey, it's me again. Do you want to tell us your breast story? Do you know someone who works with breasts in their career or has a story to tell us? Do you just have a funny story about boobs? We want to hear from you. Please DM us on Instagram or email us at theverybreastpodcastever@gmail.com if you'd like to be on the show. See you next time, breasties.